Hello, good morning. So I'm attempting to, for the first time, patch some videos together, trying to edit them for the first time. I'm learning how to do that, and this would be my attempt at doing it. But before I show you the clips that I'm patching together, um, you ever come across people who try to share the truth with them and they label you right away? Oh, you're one of those Christian fanatics or whatever, not knowing where the term Christian came from, right? It was in Antioch where they called the follower of Christ Christians in a mocking sense. Or the same thing, the CIA, in a mocking term, came up with the term conspiracy theorist. People should look up the origin of these labels, because some people may just come up with these labels in a mocking manner, and people just use them loosely. While you're working, trying to make ends meet, trying to feed the family, or maybe if you're comfortable enough trying to buy the next Mercedes or the next house, some of us are doing some homework. We're just trying to share with you what we found. We don't need any credit or appreciation. A lot of us, and I've been online for so long now, not looking for fame or not looking for money or anything else. Just sharing what we find. Stay away from these people that ask for money or ask for a plug or whatever it is. There's plenty of people trying to help online with all sorts of things. When you go on YouTube, and you could learn pretty much anything you want to learn, anything you want to fix. And people dedicate or spend enough time to share. I appreciate those people. So some of you guys should look into that. If you're not helping that way, if you're not sharing, at least, appreciate what people are doing for free. All right, I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to try to put some videos together. I videotaped them, and hopefully I'll succeed. I'm really pretty bad about these things, making up videos, patching, editing, all that. This is my first attempt. So without further ado, hopefully I can put it together and you can watch it.
You can get any crazier. Try this on for size. There's a conspiracy theory sweeping the globe that coronavirus is caused by 5G technology.
It's nonsense, but that hasn't stopped the rumour being believed and spread by millions. Angela Cox has more.
5G burning.
A 5G phone tower torched in England. A worker harassed. The real-world consequences of a fake news hoax.
But do you know what you're doing now? You're laying 5G. You know that kills people.
This COVID-19 scam illusion.
The theory is that 5G damages the human immune system. That's simply not true. But the claim has spread across the internet as fast as the virus itself.
In 2019, we had the introduction of 5G rolling out to more and more places. And where was it massively introduced? Ahead almost of anywhere. China. And what was the first city to introduce a 5G smart system? Wuhan, where this virus is supposed to have broken in.
So the 5G rumours are unfounded. It's completely false information. There is no scientific basis to it whatsoever.
Digital communications expert Daniel Angus warns people are becoming more susceptible to this type of misinformation.
People are spending more time online, and perhaps that means that, yes, they're also spending more time reading and consuming forms of fake news and misinformation.
U.S. Europa preparing massive exercise to face China in South China Sea. America must build bomber capacity to compete in the Pacific. While the United States has been focused on fighting the new coronavirus, Beijing has taken advantage of the pandemic's distraction to step up naval exercises near Taiwan, as well as in the Philippine and South China Seas. With the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt sitting sidelined in Guam, these activities were designed to signal China's growing might to the region. The U.S. military has the tools to counter such demonstrations and deliver surprises of its own. We just haven't organized ourselves yet for doing so. For example, long-range strike bombers launched from Australia, along with a guided missile submarine, or SSGN, popping up in the vicinity of the South China Sea, might have showcased the U.S. ability to mass anti-ship missiles as a counter-demonstration, signaling to friends and foes alike that the United States has more options to generate Pacific power than relying on expeditionary deployment of carriers and forward-based fighter aircraft.
delete messages after this, frankly. I don't care because this could save someone's life. I'm a nurse practitioner. I am licensed and certified. I am not on the front lines. I have a friend in New York City who's on the front lines. And for her safety, she cannot come out and say these things. So I am her voice. I'm not going to name names of people or hospitals for the safety of those involved. But this is her account, okay? I am her voice here. I'm going to tell you what she has told me. She wants this to get out. Now, I'm sure this is not the case everywhere. I'm confident. I have friends that are in other places. They're on the front lines. They're in ICU. And it's not like this everywhere. But in New York City right now, in some of the hospitals, this is what is going on. People are sick, but they don't have to stay sick. They are killing them. They are not helping them. She used the word murder, coming from a nurse who went to New York City expecting to help. Patients are left to rot and die. Her words. She has never seen so much neglect. No one cares. They are cold and they don't care anymore. It's the blind leading the blind. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was on with some nurse friends of mine and we were discussing different medications that could be used to potentially help people. Doctors who were reporting around the country that they were using a combination of medications that were helping people. People were not dying when they were on these medications. They were getting better. Those medications are not being used in hospitals in New York City. What is happening is that they're putting people on nasal cannula. If they require more than 6 liters of nasal cannula, they get intubated, they go on the vent, or they get trached if there's not enough vents. They don't get high flow, no non-rebreather, no non-invasive ventilation, no CPAP, no BiPAP. They're on a closed system, the ventilator, versus a CPAP or a BiPAP for fear that it will spread the virus. Which, by the way, I know a nurse in Florida who was fired for exposing that about CPAP and BiPAP and patients being put on the ventilator, like straight away to the ventilator, to be on a closed system. The patients don't know any better. They don't have family with them. There is no one there with them to advocate for them. So they are scared and they give consent. The ventilators have high PEEP, high pressure, which then causes barotrauma. It causes trauma to the lungs. Dr. Siddell, Cameron Kyle Siddell, a few weeks ago, put out a video. He's in New York City. And he put out a video saying something is not right, like we're not treating this correctly. We're doing something wrong. This doesn't make sense. They pulled his video from YouTube and they took him out of ICU because they couldn't have one doctor going against the grain, going against their protocol. The protocol is propofol or some kind of sedation because they're on the ventilator and IV antibiotics. There's no hydroxychloroquine. They're not using that combination with Zithromax. They're not using zinc, vitamin C, high doses of vitamins A and D. They laugh. This is what she's told me. They laugh at that. She says this is a nightmare. It's out of a horror movie and I don't want to be a part of this. There are people who are a full code, and yet, if they crash, they're not doing compressions because it will spread the virus. Full code, not doing compressions. Family is not there. They have no one to answer to. No one is being held accountable. A code was called, and no one came. So sometimes they're not even resuscitating people. Again, left to rot and die. They're not given blood because we know that the blood is not oxygenated in these COVID patients. We know that. There are doctors all around the world sounding the alarms. These are the drugs that work. This is the pathophysiology of the disease. This is what's happening. And for some reason, it's not changing. Even though we know, some of us know what's going on, nothing is changing on the front lines. They stay in the same PPE all shift, except for the top pair of gloves. So 2 pairs of gloves, or I don't know, maybe more than 2, but they're only changing the gloves on the outside. Gown, mask, whatever else stays the same because all patients are COVID patients. So if it's a COVID floor, it's all COVID. But it's not because some of them are rule out COVID. So even if they're rule out COVID and they're not COVID, they're going to get COVID because they're using the same PPE all shift and they're carrying that contamination to all the patients. They're not changing their PPE. They're not going into rooms. So they're running long tubing into the room so that they can manage the tubing from outside of the rooms. So if they're not going into the rooms, that means they're not assessing the patients as frequently as you would be otherwise assessing your patients. They are not doing rapid result tests. You're lucky if you get results in 5 days. Okay, this is coming from my friend who is in New York City right now on assignment, who went there to help, and this is what she's finding. It's a horror movie, she says. Not because of the disease, but because of the way it's being handled. She said we need help, and people are sitting there waiting in the hotels. Money, I guess, it's being paid for by FEMA, and yet they're still understaffed. And there are hundreds of people, hundreds of nurses in the hotels waiting to be called onto a shift. So there is manpower enough if the goal were to actually save people. But resources are not being utilized properly or to full capacity in a way that maximizes the patient benefit or improves the outcomes. The records and charting are crap. And now some of these hospitals in New York City are probably crappy on a good day. So you add in the fear of COVID and the fear of the whole pandemic and forget it. So if you're in a crappy hospital with crappy nurses, let's face it, all of us nurses have worked with crappy nurses before who don't care. So now you add in this, forget it. And they're having people do things that they can't do. So maybe things that they're not proficient in. So maybe a nurse who's not familiar or comfortable with using a ventilator. And it's that figure it out mentality. Figure it out. These patients are critical and they're crashing. Figure it out. So nurses are being celebrated as heroes, right? We see how like the fire trucks and the police are like lining up and practically having these parades and celebrating them as heroes. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure in some parts of the country and other ICUs, I have friends that are working on the front lines in ICU and they are good nurses. And some of them are heroes. But we have nurses being celebrated as heroes who are killing people. They're not heroes. And they're being brainwashed to think they're doing something great just by going to work because they're brave enough to go to work. Well, what are you doing at work? You're certainly not saving people if you're not even running codes. You're not even going into patient rooms. You're a coward. You're hurting people. You're killing them. You're contributing to the problem. I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, and that's fine. Because people are dying who don't have to die. Again, there's no family there, so no one's being held accountable. And once these people get intubated, they're being scared into giving consent to be intubated, and then for a lot of them, it's over. And there's nobody going to be held accountable. And there's nobody looking out for them. They are completely by themselves. There's like a total lack of critical thinking. It's out the window. And
some hospitals across the country, but for the most part, it seems to be New York. I'm just going to cut to the chase. The medical staff is killing the patients. It's not COVID. So you have nurses, medical professionals of all kinds afraid to speak out and tell the truth about what they're seeing in their emergency rooms, in their ICUs, all of those things. And I'm going to go into how bad it is in a second. It's gut-wrenching. And then you have the other 50% that are so terrified of COVID that they've thrown all critical thinking out the window. Basically, you go into the hospital with any type of upper respiratory issue. They immediately treat you COVID. Let's say a 35-year-old man walks into the hospital, has no previous conditions, is a healthy man, just has some respiratory issues. If his oxygen drops below 92%, with over 6 liters of oxygen, they're venting. They're completely bypassing BiPAP, CPAP, all of it. Their justification for bypassing CPAP is that they don't want the open air circuit, okay? Whatever. So they're completely going away from BiPAP. They're going straight to venting. The medical community knows that venting people is typically a last-ditch effort. We know that the second a person is vented, they're saying that over 75% of patients that are being vented are not surviving. So a 35-year-old walks into the hospital, consents to being vented because they're so freaking scared of something that we now know is as deadly as the flu, that they're letting them vent them and put them into a medically induced coma or just give them sedatives. This is how they're treating patients in these hospitals. They are not giving hydroxychloroquine. They actually laughed when they were asked about it. They are not giving Z-Paks. They're not giving anything that we are seeing working all around the world. They have everybody on that is COVID and non-confirmed COVID, like that both, and these people are together. They're in rooms together. They are giving them broad spectrum antibiotics and sedatives and venting them and then leaving them to die. A direct quote from one of the charge nurses, when somebody had a fever of 104, was, "Oh, we're not going to medicate him. He's dying." Excuse me? I'm sorry, what? You're not even going to try? They're being told to not perform any life-saving, no CPR, nothing that is going to be basically like you signed a DNR. They're not doing the rapid tests that are giving you results in 45 minutes. They are using the ones that they have to send into the labs. And again, when asked why and how long those results take, they laughed and said 5 days if we're lucky. So what they're doing is they have COVID patients that are confirmed COVID, and then they have rule out COVID. They're ruling everything else out and assuming they're COVID. Rule out COVID. They're putting them in rooms together. These nurses are in the same protective equipment all day long. The only thing that changes is their gloves. If you know anything about cross-contamination or any of that, even the slightest bit, you know how bad that is. If you are a nurse, if you are a CNA, if you are any of those things, you know that that is it's completely ridiculous to be venting somebody. These people are speaking in full sentences. Full sentences. They're alert, they're talking, they're just having some upper respiratory issues. You think that everybody's dying because of this COVID, when really it's the vents that are killing people. The problem is the oxygen level in the blood. Okay, that's the problem. This is not every doctor that is thinking critically and blowing the whistle is coming out and saying this is not ARD. This is not what we're used to seeing, okay? Usually when people are that severe, they can't speak to you. They are in distress. They can't breathe. These people are speaking sentences. These people are alert. They are not, it's not like they are struggling. The trucks outside with the bodies are real. They're very much real. Okay, first of all, if you guys were that concerned about COVID, why do you have a bunch of bodies that are infected with COVID just sitting in a truck outside? So it seems like this is political and that this is about money, because they get a lot of money for every COVID patient and they don't even have to test. A lot of them are not even testing. They are a rule out COVID, so now they can claim that they're a COVID patient. No autopsies are happening. Perfect scenario, they can't have guests there, so guess what? You don't have an advocate, you don't have a family member there with you, you don't have anybody.
Realistically, COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications.
The hard fact is, until we find a vaccine, going back to normal means putting lives at risk.
This will be the new normal until a vaccine is developed.
The only thing that will really allow life as we once knew it to resume is a vaccine.
Obviously, we continue to work on the vaccines, but the vaccines have to be down the road by probably 14, 15, 16 months. We're doing great on the vaccines.
The fact that so many heads of...
So we're going to have this intermediate period of opening up, and it won't be normal until we get an amazing vaccine to the entire world. The vaccine is critical because until you have that, things aren't really going to be normal. They can open up to some degree, but the risk of a rebound will be there until we have very broad vaccination. Well, they won't be back to normal until we either have that phenomenal vaccine or a therapeutic that's like over 95% effective. And so we have to assume that's going to be almost 18 months from now. And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine. So we've got to go full speed ahead on all three fronts.